What's up, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I am joined by Dmitry Shaknovich of D-Shack Law on YouTube to talk about the Diddy saga, because there really is a lot going on, and it's starting to look like the walls are closing in on him, and I want to have a legal expert give us his opinion. So, Dmitry, how have you been?
I've been good. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that, and I appreciate having the opportunity to talk about this, which is a big deal, obviously.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here. It's always great to collaborate with you guys. Dmitry has an amazing YouTube channel. It's called D-Shack Law, and he covers all sorts of legal topics that might be of interest to you. He does celebrity law. There's a lot of stuff about politics as well. So make sure to head over to his channel, which I do have linked in the description box of this video. So Dmitry, have you seen the hotel video of Diddy and Cassie? Like, that really was gruesome. It was a difficult video to watch. And I'm just wondering how you felt watching it.
Yeah, I've seen it. And as a consequence of my job, I see tough videos every day. This is a tough one. I mean, this is a tough one to watch. I squirmed in my seat. I've seen it now because I've done some of these kinds of interviews numerous times, and it doesn't get easier no matter how many times you watch it. So devastating video, difficult video to watch. Tough, very tough. What can you say?
Exactly. It felt like a lot of hatred, not even just like an anger at a partner. It felt like pure hatred for her. And I don't understand it at all. I truly was disgusted by it. We're not yet aware of how CNN obtained a copy of the video. We just know that they're the ones who broke the video. And I'm kind of curious what you think might have been the source of the video. Do you think that this was something that was potentially obtained during the raid and was subsequently released, or something else potentially?
Look at that. It will be pure speculation to talk about any of that. I just don't know, and nobody knows. I know there have been reports that Diddy bought it for $50,000 at some point.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows if that's true. Nobody knows, even if the video left the hotel enterprise, nobody knows where it went, when it went there, who had access to it, So it's impossible to really answer those kinds of questions.
It really is a difficult one. It feels so coincidental 8 years later. And now hearing that Diddy had purchased a copy of it, his homes were raided, for it to subsequently be released. It kind of feels like it might have something to do with that. So I want to draw your attention to Kodak Black. He's a rapper whose lawyer says, listen, anyone who thinks CNN obtained the video is a sucker. This was a leak. And to me, it telegraphs the fact that he is about to be charged in a bigger case. This way, if Cassie is the star witness, they can rely on the fact that she was essentially under his control. By the way, that's why this case should have been settled way before all of this. So how do you feel about like his position on the entire thing? Do you think that he might be right in some capacity?
Yeah, he might be. Look, I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy, but I'm not a naive guy. It's possible that as a result of everything we've seen over the past several months, not just this video, that something is coming down the pipe, right? The lawsuits, the accusers, the allegations in those civil lawsuits are tough. The raids, right? Whenever somebody is raided, whenever a search warrant is executed upon a residence, that's not easy to do. And that's typically not an indicator of something good coming down the pike. So it's entirely possible that all of these factors combine to lead to some criminal charge, but we don't know if and when that would happen. So again, it's important to base our understandings in what we know, in the facts. And quite frankly, we just don't know much. The lawsuit was settled well before anybody could really get anything out of it. So we have to really keep that in mind. The video is horrifying. I mean, forget about the legal stuff, right? The video is just so tough. It's going to be ingrained in the minds of the American public for forever. I don't know if he can be prosecuted for that isolated act because it happened so long ago. But that seems to be really an afterthought because of the visuals, right?
Exactly. At this point, it's just something that you can't forget. And, another thing I couldn't forget when I was watching the video was the way that he called everybody who accused him a liar. He had released a statement before the video came out. He said, enough is enough. These people are all after some, easy money, fast money, and they're trying to tarnish my name. And then for this video to come out, then for him to come out with an apology about how he's been to rehab, he sought God and whatnot. It really feels so disrespectful at this point. And now, in speaking of the video, I want to know what you think, or in your expertise, if the hotel that they were staying at, the InterContinental Hotel, has any sort of liability if the reports are true. Again, Diddy reportedly bought a copy of this video for $50,000, and it was also being reported, I believe, by his ex-bodyguard that Cassie was also given a copy of this video. So now knowing that an employee of the hotel, or potentially multiple employees, saw what happened, failed to report, and then allowed him to buy a copy, like, does that open them up to any kind of liability?
So a few things. Number one, there are very few people, entities in the law that are deemed mandatory reporters, right? People that they find out about something going on, a crime, and they have to report it. That's rare. You're talking about therapists sometimes, guidance counselors, people who have formed with a victim some sort of special relationship. And as a result of that, the law says if you find out something, you have to say something. That's rare. It doesn't apply to hotels. Now, hotels owe duties to people to not endanger their guests, essentially, right? Now, you get into tough legal waters because typically those duties don't account for intentional acts, such as the assault that we saw in the video. Typically, the duty is displaced, right, when something like that happens. What I mean by that is that if the hotel did owe a duty to Cassie, it can't necessarily foresee that Diddy would do that, right? Because that's an intentional act. And we don't hold generally third parties responsible for the intentional acts of others. That's how the law works, right? You hold people responsible for what they can foresee. Typically, you can't foresee a crime, right? They're illegal and obviously sometimes violent. Now, the other issue is the statute of limitations. This was many years ago, so it's possible that you can't even sue them now because of that. And look, nobody even knows. I mean, maybe they settled it. I mean, who knows? Nobody knows. But it's possible that some liability would exist if not for that issue.
Okay, so I'm kind of a little bit confused on that because you're talking about like what where they can foresee, but like they saw it happen. You know what I mean? And are there like people who watch these things live or anything like that? Or
and all of those questions would be important if a lawsuit was filed, right? At what point do you have to act, right? Assuming they saw what we saw, which we can't assume, right? Assuming they saw what we saw, certainly they would argue that, hey, we couldn't anticipate the initial act, but this thing seemed to have lasted for some time, right? So the question would then become, well, at what point do you act now? At what point do you intervene? At what point do you call the police? These are all legal questions that would have to be resolved if a lawsuit is filed. It won't be because it's already been some time. And like I said, maybe it already was. Maybe the hotel paid. Who knows? Nobody knows. Okay. But those are the legal questions that lawyers throw around in their brains.
And so now there's just so much going on here that it's really difficult to even know what the authorities are even looking into, right? With the raids, we saw it was the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security. We've heard about, sex trafficking, human trafficking, forcing people to take drugs, forcing people to sleep with escorts and stuff like that. Now we're seeing that there's domestic violence. Like there's just such a big tangled web and it's very messy. So I'm wondering if you can help kind of like guide us into what can potentially even come of this, because there are so many potentially illegal things that have allegedly happened and it might be, too much. I don't know. Are they looking for the big picture? Are they looking at everything individually? Like what kind of charges can Diddy potentially expect to have, handed down to him?
Well, again, from what the problem is, we don't really know much, right? We know the allegations in the lawsuit, but the lawsuit was settled right away. We obviously know what we saw in the video, but in an isolated incident, you can't really prosecute that because it's been a while. For most felony crimes, right? Now, I don't know the circumstances of that. It's possible that he was holding her against her will. Maybe that can be classified as a kidnapping charge. Typically, kidnappings have longer statutes of limitations, right? Because they're more serious crimes. But again, that's all speculation. If they can, for example, tie this video or what we see in this video to some bigger criminal enterprise, they could possibly charge that. The questions you asked are good because they're multi-jurisdictional. In other words, you could have a state case, a federal case. Right now, it's just We don't know, right? We don't know. What we do know is what we're seeing in the past several months doesn't look good.
No, no. And I'm happy that you mentioned the kidnapping charge, because that was one of my questions, because it's, you see her, she looks like she escaped somewhere. She's barefoot, she's pressing the button frantically, and then she's putting on her socks or her shoes and everything. And then she gets grabbed from behind, beaten, kicked, and then dragged. So it does look like a clear case of her being dragged somewhere against her will. So I do feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there could be a strong case for that.
Possibly. But we don't know the circumstances of all that. I don't know if that video had sound. All we know is what we saw in that video was vicious. That we know. In terms of tying it into the substantive elements of any criminal charge, that's where it becomes difficult to do. And we don't know whether or not she was cooperating with police. We don't know whether or not she had made this. It sucks, but we just don't know a lot. Maybe that's by design, right? But we just don't know a lot right now, and so all of this is pure speculation. But all these things are things that are rattling in the heads of folks, right?
Absolutely. And we're so happy to have, lawyers like you to help clear things up for us, because there's just so much going on and it's so hard to keep our heads straight. So again, you guys, I am joined by Dmitry Shaknovich of D-Shak Law. He covers all things law, legal, from celebrities to politicians, you name it. He's got that content on his channel. Make sure to subscribe to D-Shak Law on YouTube. I've got a link to his channel in the description box of this video. So I do have just two last questions here to ask before I let you go. Cassie has since been married, since she escaped P. Diddy, to her husband, Alex Fine, and together they've got children. And it has been reported, I think by him and her, that he helped save her. He had witnessed some things happening and he said, this is not okay. I need to help this woman get away. So do you think at this point Cassie has been interviewed or is a potential witness? Can her husband also be a potential witness? Because I know it's kind of complicated with married couples in legal things. Is that like a potential option here?
Well, there are certain privileges that married couples enjoy, right? You can't, in certain instances, make one testify against the other, for example. But that's not really what we're talking about. Whether or not she has been interviewed, again, we just don't know. Typically, right, if you're a victim of a crime, then you would be able to give testimony in court about what happened. Anybody else to which you tell things to generally can't, because they can only testify to hearsay. Now, there are a million exceptions to hearsay. They virtually swallow the rule. And maybe some of those would apply here, but it would depend on the facts, the charges, timelines, all of that. I can't imagine her husband would have a huge role in any case that comes up or goes to court, if anything comes up or goes to court.
Okay, I see. I just want to clarify for the viewers that her husband was Diddy's personal trainer in the past. So that's how they had met, and everything there. So other people in Diddy's circle have also spoken out, including two former bodyguards. And both bodyguards said that they have seen and they had known that he had been violent with Cassie, and that apparently it wasn't even just Cassie. Apparently he had also been allegedly violent against one of his baby mothers, Kim Porter, who is since deceased. Do you think that this is something else that they might look into? Again, there's so much going on. There's he's been sued for RICO or something. RICO has popped up. Drugs has popped up. Trafficking, human trafficking, all that. And now we're hearing that he wasn't only violent to Cassie, but potentially also to another woman that is being named. Is that something, especially with her unfortunately being, passed away, that could, happen in this investigation?
Well, it's possible. Look, it's you can't really prosecute a crime when the victim is deceased, other than a murder charge, right? Because you would need that victim to testify to certain things. In murder cases, obviously, you never have the victim, right? Unfortunately. And so murder prosecutors, that's why they're considered some of the best in the country, is because they know how to present the case to a jury without a victim, which is very hard. So unless you can tie something in there, it's unlikely that he would be prosecuted for that.
Okay. All right. Listen, like you said, there's a lot that we still don't know. A lot of these questions are still very speculative. So we're going to have to wait until more information comes out, more solid information, and hopefully some charges come out as well so that we can continue to talk about this with some concrete, information in our hands. But in the meanwhile, thank you so, so much for all of your takes on everything. It has been super duper informative. So I want to remind you guys that Dmitry Shaknovich does have his own YouTube channel. It's called D-Shak Law. I will link to it in the description box of this video. You can definitely head over there for more legal analyses. So Dmitry, do you have anything coming up on your channel that you want to promote?
Oh, I always have shorts coming out and videos coming out, interviews coming out. Anybody that's interested in the law or the analysis of the law as it relates to things in pop culture and current events, I'd certainly encourage folks to go and check it out.
Amazing. Thanks again. And I'll see you in my next video, you guys. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care.